Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And of course, we couldn't be here unless we were joined by the founder of the Four Horsemen, the enforcer himself, AA, Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
Doing great, sir. Yourself?
Man, I'm happier than a puppy with two Peters. I'm excited to be here with you. It's middle of October. We're doing another hashtag Ask Arn Anything. Life is good.
Why would you need two Peters?
Well, I'm just saying a puppy would really like that, probably. I mean, it seems like it's my dog's favorite toy.
Double your pleasure, double your fun type thing.
I don't know. I just know I go get him new toys every time we go to the store, and I come back and he still likes that thing better than anything I pull out of the box.
One thing about having, and I'm a dog person, buddy, there is unconditional love and a great companion. They are our best friend. That's for sure.
No doubt about it. And we're going to try to be your best friend today, because we're doing another hashtag Ask Arn Anything. Coming up next week, we're going to be doing Bragging Rights 2010. And if you haven't already, you got to join us over at adfreeshows.com. We just watched Arn's last pay-per-view match against Lex Luger, Halloween Havoc 1996. What a time that was. Don't you dare miss it. Let's jump into the questions though, Arn. We got 281 to pick from today, just on Twitter alone. There's no way we'll get to them all. But I got to tell you, you're going to get a chuckle out of the very first one. Are you ready for this?
Not sure, but shoot.
People are obsessed with your food. Brian wants to know, what's your go-to sandwich? Now, I'm assuming he means not a burger, not one that you can hit at a drive-through, but one that Aaron's going to make for you at the house.
I'm really going to disappoint, but this comes from, I want to say upbringing, habit, things you develop, your socioeconomic situation at the time. It's going to be bologna with a little mayo on white bread, and Brian bologna would be the one of choice.
You really are Tony Schiavone's pal. He loves that shit.
I was a bologna guy. I was a potted meat guy. I was a canned corned beef guy.
Oh, that's different now. Canned corned beef is hard to beat.
Stir it up with some onions in a pan. Back to that fresh white bread with a little mayo, a little pepper. Good to go. Your selections, we didn't have like gourmet ham and turkey and all that. That wasn't in our budget when we went to the grocery store. So better get used to bologna. And you know what? Turned out it was just fine. People, I know a lot of people that fry it and like it that way. I bet you've had a fried bologna sandwich, being a Southern boy.
I've had one, and that was one too many. I'm not a fan of bologna. It's not my jam.
Don't get hot. But the raw bologna, I just still enjoy a bologna sandwich.
Speaking of bologna, your pal Tony Schiavone, he's full of bologna. And once upon a time, we did a word association on the show. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, I said, elegante. And his exact response was, roll of bologna.
World of bologna.
roll of bologna, like the whole loaf, like not a slice of bologna, the whole bologna.
Oh, you're talking about the chunk bologna from.
That's your boy, Tony. Just, connect the dots. This is Kirk writes, any memories of AWA or your trips to Minnesota in your career? Also, why doesn't Minnesota get more love as a wrestling hotbed for talent, prior generations to current? And I gotta agree. We've heard a ton about how many great wrestlers came from there. We just talked about this the other day, but the Ravishing Rick Rude, the Mr. Perfects, the Road Warriors, Flair. I mean, Steamboat went through up there. There's been so many great wrestlers that got their start in Minnesota. Hulkamania was born in Minnesota, but I don't think you were ever in the AWA officially, right? I mean,
No, sir.
Yeah. But Minnesota, though, any fun memories over the years? I mean, obviously the first Nitro was there. There are some momentous moments. Do you have a favorite Minnesota wrestling memory yourself?
Well, that first Nitro was pretty cool. Being in the Mall of America, that whole setting was different and it was unique. And it was, that was a time where we knew the ramifications. We were going to war, Monday Night Wars, and it was exciting and everyone was on board and everyone was, in the frame of mind that let's go compete. Let's give them something different. And just that whole setting of coming through the people, on that show. I remember we did a deal where I came through the people. I'm in a sweatsuit and, some of the shenanigans that went on, and it had a different feel than just a wrestling match. Being in a studio or in an arena, it was totally different feel. It was awesome. So it was the beginning of a dawn of a new day, and you just knew it. You just felt it.
Stuart Walter wants to know which of Arn's opponents smelled the worst. Arn, I got to tell you, one of the reasons this probably comes up is Bruce Pritchard has gone on to say that, Vader was legendary for not washing his gear, or maybe infamous is a proper term. What about you? Anybody you can list that maybe wasn't the best smelling opponent you ever had?
Well, I mean, there was so much heat involved when that occurred. If you had guys that showed up and, with their gear stinking, it was like a bad joke around the locker room. If it was a guy that was, let's just say, on the roster, he comes into the territory, it's his first day or two, and you find out the guy's got stinky gear, you give him the benefit of the doubt the next day. But if reports go out that this guy stinks, some way, somehow word gets back to him. Hey man, take a bath, take a shower and wash your gear, because we're in very close quarters, and sometimes for 30 minutes at a time, guy's got you in a head scissors and his gear stinks. It's not fun. It's not funny. It's a part of ring etiquette. It's like clipping your fingernails. You don't come to the ring with long, dirty fingernails. As disgusting as that may be, it doesn't take much in that setting when we're all sweaty to get scratched by a dirty fingernail. Before you know it, you got staph infection.
Oh, wow.
Staph gets in the mat. Guess what? Everybody's got staph infection, and that'll kill you. To think you could get killed from a dirty set of fingernails is, and you just group that in there with having, your gear clean. And Leon was a sweater, and now nobody's going to throw rocks at you about sweating, because I was as bad as anybody. But every single night you wash your gear out in the sink. Does it take, much time, money, or effort? And it's just one of those things that you do it in consideration for your opponent. It's like you brush your teeth before you go to the ring. You don't want to have rotten breath, out there in those close quarters. It's just part of ring etiquette, locker room etiquette that you just knew to do because it was passed on. Now at 400 pounds, Leon was, pretty menacing deal. I don't know how many guys said, "Hey, Leon, your gear stinks.
Right.
Wash your gear." But he would be top of the list, I think.
Well, that's unfortunate. Justin wants to know, Arn is one of my all-time favorites. Does Arn have any memories of working here in Knoxville back in the day? I remember watching Jimmy Golden here in the Knoxville area when I was a kid. Of course, Jimmy would go on to become Bunkhouse Buck. Any good Bunkhouse Buck stories you can share with us over the years?
Yeah, it's funny. We just with the passing not too long ago with Bob Armstrong, who was one of my heroes. He was like a father figure to me. He was the first guy to give me a break in the business and help me get booked and stuff. And, prior to me actually going down and working the territory, I've told the story where I worked for Bob coming off Atlanta TV for 3 weeks. And then he got me booked for Bill Watts. And one of those television matches was with Jimmy Golden, and who is Bunkhouse Bunk. And I didn't even know what I was hearing at the time, but when you first learn, and I was powerlifting back then, and I was a little tight, and I was really green as goose shit. I didn't know anything, but I was wrestling Jimmy Golden on television, and Jimmy had done an angle where he had his arm broke a few weeks earlier, and he had a cast on that arm. So I guess during the course of our TV match, I was hitting Jimmy, I guess, a little snug with a flipper across the back or across the chest or something that I wasn't trying to be an asshole. I just didn't know any better. And I guess I got a little snug with him, and brother, he come off the ropes and clotheslined me with that cast, and I was seeing stars. Dust flew off of that cast. I mean, it was like he brought it, and we got backstage, and I was kind of over in the corner by myself, and I heard him talking, and Jimmy was talking to Bob, and he says, well, he was getting a little snug out there with him, so I had to wake him up. And Bob looked right at him and said, he don't care. And that was a compliment. I didn't know it at the time, but That was Bob complimenting me.
Yep.
And it was kind of his way of sticking up for me.
Yep.
And I remembered that, when I could start to figure the business out a little bit, I figured out Jimmy did the right thing. Bob did a really nice thing, and I made a mistake that I tried to not make anymore. I tried to get better and just look like I was knocking your head off instead of actually knocking your head off. So it was such a rich experience for me at that time, and learning from it, I was very appreciative. And, Bunkhouse Bunk turned out to be just a fantastic character and a fantastic worker. Jimmy Golden anybody's worked with him, he's excellent, and he was skilled in the old school coming through Knoxville, and them owning territories, the Fullers, and in the Knoxville area, and the rich history that it has to this day as far as wrestling fans. So Knoxville's always been one of those towns you went to, you knew if you had 3,000 people or 10,000 or 500, they were hardcore wrestling fans that loved it and gave you back everything that you gave them.
I'm really glad we got to tell that story. That was a great one. Nate wants to know, on a recent podcast, you said you didn't get into pro wrestling to become champion. That runs counter to the opinion of some that if you don't want to be champion, you quote, shouldn't be in the business. And I think that's a line that Dusty Rhodes famously said to DDP, and it's been repeated a bunch. Have you ever had a discussion with any of the boys about this, and why is your approach different maybe than Dusty's?
Well, I think Dusty always knew that he was a guy that could and should have been world champion. In his mind, that was his goal. And, he was right. That personality of his was far and above and beyond most people's even ability to understand it, much less perceive it. My goal was always, I was not a guy that I walked in the room and everybody looked at and went, damn, what a look. It's one of those, my deal was bell to bell. And I knew pretty early on that I could adapt and adjust to about anybody's style. Now I just wanted to get the psychology part and, and get smooth and get comfortable in the ring and, increase the tools on my tool belt so I could had something for every situation that occurred, no matter who the opponent. I had something I could do to entertain the audience. And that was my goal. It was totally different. There was days that I would think about what would it be like to be the world champion? My God. But it wasn't something I harped on. I did want to be that guy that went out there every night with a different babyface opponent and was able to just tear the joint down. That was my goal. And, it just when you don't have the body of a Lex Luger or the charisma of a Dusty Rhodes, there's plenty of spots left on the card for guys that can just go out and really give you a tremendous performance and pull something out of you emotionally as an opponent and as an office member, or not an office member, but a audience member. Sorry about that. And that was my goal.
John Bush wants to know, how would a match between FTR and the Brainbusters go? You and Tully would be the heel in this scenario. He also continues, I've been a fan of yours for over 30 years. I just want to thank you personally for everything. I always look forward to your matches, and I absolutely love the Spinebuster. So way to go, John. Appreciate all the compliments for our pal Arn here. What do you think though? How would that match go? The Brainbusters and FTR.
Well, are we all in the same time frame when proper ages? Is this a wish list?
We're going to say everybody's 30. How's that?
Everybody's 30. Okay. All right. I don't know. It sure would be interesting to match wits with those guys. They're quick studies and they're very talented, and the thing about it is they know who they're patterning themselves after. It's not like they're saying when guys compare them to us, they're the first ones to say you're 100% right. They don't deny it. They've copied our thought process more so than the actual move set. It's the thought process. It's the being a team and truly understanding where your partner is at all times. If you get in trouble, he's just an arm reach away. That's ring positioning and cutting the ring off and isolating your opponent onto your half of the ring so that if you do get in trouble, you're just a tag away. And those guys have perfected it. They're a lot more athletic than Tully and I will ever be. That's for sure. And that's just evolution of the entire crew of these young wrestlers. And any company you want to pick out there, you look at them athletically and just go, God, I couldn't have even thought of that or pictured that in my mind, much less pulled it off. As far as us wrestling them, I still would like to think that the one advantage we might have is we were a little nastier. Our thought process was a little bit more vicious, and I have no problem kicking a guy's knee out from under him or punting him in the head or anything we had to do to gain an advantage. And Tully didn't have a problem with it either. And I think these guys have a skill set that is beyond ours. I just don't know if they have that nasty, vicious frame of mind that we had. And that would be our advantage. Theirs would be the advantage that they're just technically more sound than we are.
It's interesting to talk about FTR too, because I think a lot of times when we fans see a really successful tag team, we start to think about the inevitability of, well, one day these guys will split up and then they'll go on to be single stars. And I wonder what that'll look like, because we've seen it with the Hart Foundation or the British Bulldogs or the Rockers. Heck, even you and Tully were singles competitors. But for whatever reason, I just don't get that impression with FTR. I tend to think that their goal is to stay a tag team. I mean, I'm not asking you to reveal any sort of trade secrets or inside knowledge that you have, but would it surprise you if those guys remained a tag team forever?
Well, backing up a little bit, Tully and I never split up.
Right.
We went separate ways, because of business decisions, but it was, We never got into a feud or anything of that nature. These guys are committed to being a team, and I think being the best team when it's all said and done, that ever lived. And I think that's a very achievable goal for them, and I think it's a admirable one, because if they do become that team and they do, you know, survive the test of time, that will have meant they've been in some incredible tag matches with some of the best teams alongside them of their era. I don't see them splitting up. I think their goals are too consistent. I think their friendship is too consistent, and they really are tight, close friends. And I don't see that. And to be honest with you, I don't want to see them split up.
Right.
I think the sum of the parts is more valuable than them individually.
Yeah, I agree too. I hope they stick together. Memphis wants to know, what are Arn's 3 demandments, or more generally, what are 3 simple things you should you should do to live your most rewarding life? Boy, I butchered that one. Do you have 3 things, like 3 rules of thumb that you live your life by that have served you well?
Sweat every day.
There's
Doesn't
one.
doesn't matter how you do it. Put your family first in your business thoughts. One of those reasons to get out and go sweat every day, and whether it's at the gym or it's running or whatever the deal may be, doesn't matter. You want to stay healthy. You want to enjoy every day, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. you know. Put your family first, and I guess just take something out of every single day out of your life and enjoy it. Doesn't matter how minor or major it is, just find something about every day to enjoy, because when you're on this road, especially in this business, and this spills over, I know we're talking about generalities as far as life, but when you're in this business, you're going to be on the road a lot of times. You're going to be away from your family. It's going to be time that you will never, ever get back. At 61, I spend a lot of my time sitting on the couch, just enjoying the moment that I'm watching television, sharing a pizza, sharing whatever the meal may be that night. And I'm not a big pizza guy, but it doesn't suck to sit there and watch Braves baseball with my boys and my wife, and eating a piece of pizza and just going, this is cool being together, because you're separated so much of the time. And before you know it, 20 years has went by, and you find out that your children are now adults, and they think like adults and they act like adults, and sometimes they do anyway. And their thought process is at a whole different level that you didn't even realize happened. They grow up quick. So enjoy your family while you can, and always put them at top of the list.
Good information. Good advice. This is, I think, what they call in the business sitting under the learning tree, boys and girls. Aaron wants to know, if Vince had really shown up when Eric Bischoff challenged him to a fight, who do you think would have won in real life?
The audience.
I agree.
Something tells me that would have went south pretty quickly. I can't even imagine that, but hey, who knows? Eric's got that martial arts background, right?
He does.
He might have broke down on some kung fu fighting. The fact that Vince was all jacked up may or may not have came into play. It might have been one for the ages.
Cornette says in real life, Vince would eat Bischoff alive just because he's got a fucked up, I'm not going to let this guy beat me no matter what mentality. Whereas Bischoff is probably more of a points karate fighter. At least that's Cornette's thinking. But of course we know that Bischoff spit a bunch of chiclets out of his mouth over the years because he used to be a bouncer and get in fights. So it would have been something to see, but I do think Corny might be onto something with Vince. Has got to be like just strong willed as hell. And I don't think he would have wanted to take an ass whipping in front of a live crowd.
Let's put it to you this way. It would have been either real good or real bad.
Yeah. No in between.
As a spectator, it would have been one or the other. I'm pretty sure.
Adam Hall wants to know, did you ever really have a dog named Spot? Of course, they're trying to be a smart ass about your retirement speech, but come on. You never had a dog named Spot, did you?
No, absolutely not. I have always, grown up with dogs, and my grandfather had 2 bird dogs, liver spot pointers. He was a quail hunter, and that was the dogs that I had growing up. I had a pit bull terrier, and as an adult, we have had 3 dogs. We had a Cocker Spaniel named Sammy, who was with us, God bless him, for 13, going on 14 years, who was the first member of my family as an adult. And then we had Petey, who is a red palm, and we now have Smokey, who is a black palm. So that's been the members of our family. No one named Spot.
Smokey? That ain't after some SEC stuff, is it?
No, it was meant to be. We were going to get 2. So it was going to be Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, I love that.
And this was Brock's idea, and he picked out Smokey, and we haven't got the Bandit yet, but I'm pushing for it.
Well, we know who we got to sell on that. DX927 writes, was Arn ever a fan of chocolate cake like JR? If not, then what's his favorite real cake? Now, let me give you a little peek behind the curtain. On JR's show, he says that when he first went to work for Vince, they had a code word, him and Bobby Heenan, not eating. Bobby would say, Jim, you still got some of that chocolate cake in your room? And it was code for, well, maybe something Rob Van Dam might enjoy. So DX927 wants to know, were you ever a fan of that kind of chocolate cake, or was that not your deal?
What, a big doobie?
Yeah. Or a little one, a medium sized one.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. It's been nicknamed chocolate cake by Bobby Heenan, and we keep that tradition alive with JR.
Well, you know what? I think anybody that says, that grew up my age and went through the 70s and 80s and all that, and, that says they didn't have a little puff experimentally, it'd be lying.
Right.
I would suggest having that chocolate cake be a real thing. And after you had a puff, have a big piece of chocolate cake.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. That's for sure.
Bet your ass they do.
What about your actual favorite type of cake? Not a gimmick, but a real cake. What's your favorite go-to?
Well, I think I've mentioned this on the show before. Erin makes a chocolate cake that I get usually just on my birthday, that she actually melts the Nestle morsels into the batter, or into the, not the cake, but the icing.
Right.
And it becomes real heavy, and it is real moist, and it's one of those that instead of a day or two later it gets dry, this one gets even more moist for whatever magic she puts in it.
Wow.
It's awesome, buddy. Now, creme brulee cheesecake from Firebirds.
Oh, I know where that is. I've been there.
Buddy, have you had the creme brulee cheesecake?
No, I have not. I'll tell Megan though, but Morgan loves Firebirds. So usually if I'm there for a week, I'm eating it at least once.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of our favorites, but that, no matter what you do, get that next time. It is outstanding.
Let's keep it moving here. This is an interesting. Ramones wants to know, or I'm sorry, Rambones. What a name. Who is your top tag team from the 20th century? And who's your top team so far in the 21st century? And where do you see tag team wrestling going in the next 20 years? A lot to unpack here. I don't think I'm stepping on a limb to say your favorite modern team right now is FTR, right?
Yes, sir.
So who is your favorite tag team of the prior century? Midnights, Rock and Rolls, somebody else?
Well, both of those, I would say. That's two of the ones that really stand out. I guess my favorite of all time would have to be Slater and Orton, because they are the ones that inspired me to want to be a wrestler.
Well, there you go. Slater and Orton. I don't know that I would have guessed that, but that's cool. And then what do you think wrestling's going in the next 20 years? Tag team wrestling, that is.
I think it will always be around because it gives four guys the chance to go out and really shine in the confines of one match. And when it's done well, it's kind of hard to follow a great tag match. And I truly believe that. You have the championships on the right team, and you have the right challengers, and you have the right story in place, and you got 30 minutes to get it done. It's hard to follow a great tag match.
Cody has a question for you that I'm sure is going to get you quarter hot. He says, Arn, you're known more for your Spinebuster, but the DDT was your finish. Why did you not just stick with the Spinebuster as your finish?
Because I could get to a DDT from anywhere.
Right.
It made it easy to attempt it and get it countered and get it blocked and build the drama into the match that I was really desperately attempting to hit a DDT on a guy. And I literally could come from the depths of death and hit it on a guy. And, it just worked. It really did.
Interesting question here. One we've never really talked about. Mayhem wants to know, what was it like feeding a comeback for baby faces like Ricky Morton or Magnum TA, where every bump you take is a wall of noise from screaming fans, or dealing with a constant roar from the Rock and Roll Express's female fans? Does that throw off your timing in the ring?
Hell no. It lit a fire under my ass. It's what I live for. You can go back and watch some of those old television tapings or stuff, and from the moment, those guys came through the curtain to the moment they went back through the curtain, it was like just a constant, if that came across right on, it just was a constant roar from the crowd, and they never got quiet. And it just, as we all know, ask any athlete, what helps drive you? Obviously being in shape, loving the sport that you're in, or however you want to put it, or an entertainer who's in, a high wire act in the, Cirque du Soleil, doesn't matter, pro football, basketball, whatever. The thing that drives you, the freebie that you get, is adrenaline, and the audience gives you adrenaline, and that's what fuels your performance. And when they are just ape shit for the entire time, or most of the time you're in the ring, that's the adrenaline rush you get that fuels you. And that's what puts some of your performances over the top.
Tyson Thompson writes, with the NFL starting back, what position would Arn Anderson want to play? Linebacker, perhaps? That is sort of fun to think about. Arn Anderson as a football player. If we could drop you in a lineup somewhere in your prime, what position do you think you would have enjoyed?
Yeah, linebacker would have been, I played linebacker in high school, and I actually played, beside a gentleman named Ray Donaldson, who went on to be a center for the University of Georgia and was on that national champion team with Herschel, 1980. And was an excellent linebacker. They did move him to center, like I said, and it was a fun position to play because you could do some head hunting. I was never skilled enough to play college or certainly pro, but even at the high school level in Georgia, there were some pretty good high school teams, that we played very competitive. A lot of athletes went on to college and some to play pros. So it was a fun position to play.
Here's a fun one. Peter wants to know, does Arn have any good Virgil stories? Haven't seen him talked about that much. What was your opinion of him? Of course, the real life Mike Jones, we've had a lot of fun talking about with Tony Schiavone on what happened when. And of course, he was with you briefly in the WWF as Virgil, but then you probably were around him a little more in WCW when he was Vincent with the NWO. Any good Mike Jones stories you can share with us?
Well, I don't know if I've told this one before, but one day we're backstage. I was walking and talking with Curt Hennig, and Vincent or Virgil or whoever you want to call him was walking ahead of us. I forget what we're even talking about. We're just probably yucking it up. And he paused for a moment and he looked at Virgil, and he didn't even look at me. He just said, Beetlejuice. And I immediately knew what he's talking about. The shrunken head, the tiny head. You had Virgil all jacked up and he had this little walnut head. And man, I almost peed myself. I was laughing so hard. That's all he said was the one word. And it was almost like it was code. And it just fit. I got it. And it was just part of that Curt Hennig humor.
Mike Whitaker has an interesting question that I don't think I've ever asked you about. He says, have you ever talked to the guy that slapped you on your back that fateful day and talked to him about what happened? Did you know the guy who patted you on the back that day in Vegas when you knew something was wrong, or was it just a random fan or something?
Well, no, it wasn't in Vegas. It was after I had my surgery and I was back at Gold's Gym and I was rehabbing. I was thinking I was coming back.
Right.
And I'm in the gym, and, my strength is coming back and I'm stretching out and I'm starting to feel good. I guess I'd been back in the gym maybe 2 months, and I thought I was on schedule, and I didn't even know who the guy was. I didn't know him. It was just somebody that had seen me in there for years. I guess had been a member, or maybe not even years. Maybe I don't know his backstory, but I know it wasn't someone that I knew. It was just someone that I was gone out of the gym, and I got the impression he didn't know maybe why. And now I'm back, and it was like, okay, good to see you. Glad to see you're back here. It was just one of those things. But it was the day that I realized you're done.
Right.
So no, I did not know who the guy was, nor do I even have a recollection. I'm sure I saw him many times after that because I went back to the same gym many times. Or I don't know if it scared him that he thought he might have knocked the water out of my hand, or I don't know what the deal was, but I don't recall seeing him after that.
Saki the Sock Puppet, what a name, wants to know what's been the most disappointing and the proudest matches you've ever had and why. We've talked a lot about some of your favorite matches that you had, and we'll get back to that. But when I say most disappointing match, does one jump to mind?
Probably the Renegade match.
Yeah.
It just stunk. And I couldn't fix it. There's no way I could fix it. It just was not good, and it wasn't going to get good. And the longer it went, the poor audience, they figured out pretty soon it was going to be a stinker. That's one that I was not able to save or fix or even make presentable.
What about your favorite? Do you have a favorite proudest moment?
I don't think one that really steps out, above the others. I enjoyed my time in the ring pretty much every single time I went out there because I knew that I had some way, somehow been blessed and actually got to do what I envisioned doing as a child. And now it had come to fruition. I was actually doing it, and I was actually in a position to do it for at least an extended period of time. And when you wanted something as badly as I wanted that, I mean, it's all I can ever remember wanting to do with my life. I didn't want to be fireman. I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a president. I didn't want to be any of those things, that kids go through, when they're young and growing up and, hey, I want to do this. All I can ever remember from about age 8 was I wanted to be a wrestler, and I was doing it. And it was never lost on me that each time I went to the ring, hey, you're here, pay attention, learn, enjoy it, because you actually made it.
Here's an interesting one from Seth. He says, was there ever a time when a pro athlete or celebrity was brought into work and immediately it was discovered they were so bad that any possible opportunity was immediately dropped? Remember that ever being discussed and somebody maybe ran the ropes one time and was like, nope, this ain't for me?
No, unfortunately, if they were invited in and there was conversation about having a match, once they were there, guess whose hands it fell on to try to make it work.
Yeah, that couldn't have always been easy.
I never remember a situation where they were gotten in the ring and they just went, God, they're so terrible. We can't risk that. We can't risk the other guys, getting crippled or hurt because this guy's so rotten. Because if they would have never let Elegante in the ring.
Wow. Yeah.
It was terrible. And as I found out, had some strength when he got mad.
I don't know if you've heard it, but, Jim Ross has a great story about coaching up Elegante. They were supposed to do a promo together and they were trying to tease something with him and Flair. I'm sure the thinking was the old cliche, well, Flair can have a good match with a broomstick. So they're maybe going to put that to the test with Elegante. And in the promo, as Jim say, all right, you need to say something like this and you need to talk about Ric Flair and just say something like this. Are you ready? Yes. So he tees it up and then puts the mic in front of his face and he says, Ric Flair, I kill you. He's like, okay, cut. Let's do that again. Can't say I'm going to kill you. So they do it again. Same thing. Ric Flair, I kill you. Just hilarious. So he had the same aptitude for the mic that he did in the ring, I guess.
Well, so somebody should have got a giant broom and swept him out of the building.
Let Rick wrestle the broom. Yeah.
Because then we had confirmed two of the things that you really need to be able to do is talk and wrestle. And he couldn't do either one, but he was tall. He was 8 feet tall.
Something else. Jesse James Smith wants to know, instead of feuding with them and instead of bringing in Paul Roma, what if Steve Austin and Brian Pillman, the Blondes, became Horsemen with you and Flair? I think it would have worked. What do you think?
You bet your ass it would have worked. But at that point in time, no one was really trying to, the Horsemen were staples, the name, the history. But by that time, the Horsemen had been so diminished. We weren't a real threat like we were at one time. I mean, we dominated the industry. Jim Crockett Promotions, I would say, and I would put the Midnight Express in that same vein. But, from 85 to 88, if you said Jim Crockett Promotions or NWA, first thing you thought was Horsemen.
Right.
By this time, there had been so many different versions of it that it wasn't considered by anybody, including us. We even felt it. We weren't the staples of the company, the cornerstone anymore. But if you would have put those two guys with us and really put a rocket on it, now I'm just sitting here feeling it right now. God knows where that could have went, because those personalities would have jailed. I had tagged with Austin. I'd been in the ring with Austin. I'd wrestled Austin. I had made, some trips with Austin, very few, and I drank a lot of beer with Austin. And I knew that we had a lot of the same thought processes where the business was. Brian Pillman was one of those guys that very intense, very athletic, very smart, had a wrestling IQ, had some things in his mind that he wanted to try. And, as far as within the industry and came to light later on, that whole loose cannon thing, we will never know how real it was or if he was just a world-class actor. Who knows? You never knew with Brian, was he that guy or was he not? So it's a very interesting what if.
It is. It's hard to imagine, but it is fun to think about. Maple Leaf Wrestling History Podcast, a mouthful, says, do you remember January of 97 very well? It's a long shot, but I was wondering if you remember your last match teaming with Mongo against PCO and Jacques Rougeau. I was wondering if you had any stories you might share about that night in question.
Yeah, I remember that. And I think that was my actual last match prior to surgery. And, I think it went okay, just okay. I'm sure those guys, weren't happy to be in the ring with Mongo. Mongo was not polished, but he was a bad enough apple. Nobody was going to tell him that at the time.
Right.
I'm sure of that. And I just remember it being passable. And I want to say those guys beat me that night, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I'll remember it.
Leon Daly says, do you still stay in contact with Barry Windham? We don't see or hear much of him, and his turn to join the Horsemen was one of the best heel turns ever, in my opinion. He was just so great in the ring.
Yeah, Barry, I've had the opportunity to do some signings over the last couple years, maybe 4 or 5, with the Horsemen, Tully and JJ included, and several places, which I've really enjoyed talking to Barry at those. He lives down in Central Florida, I think, and pretty much kind of keeps to himself unless he's doing a signing or something. I haven't seen him, not nearly as much as I would have liked to have, because I always got along with Barry. We were very good friends for a long time in the business, and really a special guy.
Let's do another one here. Instagram or wrestling historian wants to know, what was it about Tully Blanchard that made him your best tag team partner? That's an interesting question, because we know you had Ole, we know you had Larry Zbyszko, but your old pal Bobby Eaton, he's up there in that rarefied air as being one of the most universally well-respected and most talked about great tag team wrestlers ever, and one of your very best friends. What was it about Tully that made it special with you and him?
His wrestling IQ was advanced beyond mine. His thought process was really advanced as far as how to utilize me. The fact that we were oil and water, we were totally different in our styles. Tully was second generation, and I've said before, those guys just have the advantage on the rest of us because they grow up in the business. Tully was really, really smart. He was really one of those guys, and he was such an asshole that it just bled through to the audience. Tully might have been respected. A lot of people, will tell the truth these days. They'll say, I respected Tully's ability, but I really didn't like him.
Right.
And that's the best way to describe it, because he was a horseman. He lived it 100%. He had the watch, he had the wardrobe, he drove the Mercedes, he lived the lifestyle of a horseman. And it was one of those things that you knew when Tully Blanchard came through the curtain, you were looking at a professional. And he believed that his, crap doesn't stink. And to this day, he just has that swagger about him. When you see him walking around, once he gains his confidence in his setting, he owns the room. And that's the way he was. And he was so good at utilizing my skills to complement his skills and turn it into a formidable team. And I learned a lot from him, and I give him a lot of credit for the success that the Horsemen had, because he was the one constant. He was the one heel in the ring that everybody despised.
Let's talk about something more current. Reluctant Millennial wants to know, what do you think about the way Roman Reigns is being presented alongside Paul Heyman?
Well, I've said before, Roman should still be a heel from the first day. The Shield, were hired or utilized or whatever you want to say by Hunter as his hit squad. He should have never been anything but that kick-ass Samoan killing machine. That's who he is, and that's how he's going to, get even better than he is right now, because he's going to be allowed to be himself. And putting words in his mouth and having him be something that he's not, was a mistake with Roman. It's crystal clear who he is and who he should have been from day one. Paul Heyman is also a guy that, even though a lot of people in the industry now, the curtain's pulled back a little bit and they respect him as far as his ability to cut a promo and get you revved up for the upcoming match. Paul has a lot of skills and a lot of history and a lot of knowledge, and he's very unlikable as well. And I think he will make it easier for Roman to be a unlikable figure.
One last one, then we'll wrap up this week. Comes to us from King Owen 94. Were you happy with how your autobiography turned out? I'm sure this comes up because recently we had a question here on the show that asked, would you write a second book? And you shut it down and said, nope, not for you. Were you not happy with the way your first one turned out?
No, it was fine, but it reached a moment in my career that it was a stepping off point. I have had 19 years in a bubble that I've probably talked about to the point of people are sick of hearing about it, but I've had a little bit of a career resurgence to where there is a second step in my career. There is, with my son, Brock, now training. And, I have high hopes for him as far as being able to become a part of this business. It's like a whole nother phase to my life. It hasn't played out one way or the other to the point that I can go, okay, this was a success. He's now in the business. Here's what he's doing. Here's, until I can sit in the stands, if it's meant to be, if God has it in his plan for us, until I can sit in the stands with his mother and watch him go out and perform, good or bad, whatever he has to bring to the business and offer, and see him come back through the curtain safely. I won't be at a getting off point where I can go, okay, now I'm going to write the next chapter to my life and involving him. And it just doesn't feel like I'm at a point to where a second, if not final version of, okay, here was your life the first 15 years, here was the next 25. And it just doesn't feel like I'm there yet. I'm still relatively active in the industry. So I feel like it should be over one way or the other. And certainly I'm not wishing death, but short of death, certainly retirement and full retirement should be the point where you write your second book, I think.
Well, that's going to wrap us up this week. We appreciate you guys tuning in for another hashtag Ask Arn Anything. Coming up next week, we've got Bragging Rights 2010, and then we'll finish up the month of October with another hashtag Ask Arn Anything. And don't forget, coming up next week, we've got the Chamber of Horrors 1991 watch along. Yes, we're going to make Arn Anderson watch Abdullah the Butcher get electrocuted. That was a real thing. It's all happening over at adfreeshows.com, where you can get all these shows early and ad free. And Arn, you've even had some interactive events over there. We've done a few Zooms now, and I hear that you're having a great time with those.
Developing a lot of friendships, a lot of family. That family is growing, by the way. Love to have everyone be a part of it.
Check it out if you haven't already. It's adfreeshows.com. Until next time, he is at The Arn Show on Twitter. I am Matt Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here for Bragging Rights 2010. It's Arn.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.